Hi, and welcome to the Natural Healing Show on UK Health Radio. My name is Yara. Today I'll be speaking with a man named Doug Buckingham. Now, Doug is a trainer, a therapist, and a talker, solutions for the mind, body, and the soul. And he's skilled in a number of different therapies, including hypnotherapy, regression therapy, inner child therapy, past life regression, spirit release, energy field clearing. He also uses hypnotherapy to help people stop smoking. He does spiritual counseling, Reiki. So there's a lot of skills and therapies to explore in today's show, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to Doug about them all. Thank you so much for joining me today, Doug, on the Natural Healing Show. How are you today?
I'm very good, Yara, and thank you for inviting me. It's always a joy to be asked to go anywhere where you can talk about what you do.
And that's what the Natural Healing Show is all about, really. It's just spreading awareness on these different natural healing therapies. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show, Doug.
Thank you.
Can you please introduce yourself and what you do to the listeners?
I'd love to. I am Doug Buckingham, and I'm a hypnotherapist, a regression therapist, a life between lives practitioner, and a few other things as well. I work with sound, I work with crystal bowls, and I've trained. I used to be a Reiki teacher. I've only recently stopped teaching Reiki because I ran out of time in my life to do all the things that I love doing. I work on a one-to-one basis as a therapist, and I also teach. I teach most of the modalities that I just talked about. I teach hypnosis, regression, and life between lives. So really the ones that I'm concentrating on at this particular moment in time. For me, I'm doing a couple of things in the sense that I'm helping to spread something when I'm teaching or when I'm working with people one-to-one, something that I believe is highly effective for them in their lives in order to help them live more enjoyable, more fulfilling lives. But it's also a passion for me. I really love what I'm doing, and I think you probably know, because by the sound of it, you like what you're doing. And I think when you have that passion for what you're doing, it really comes across and it really helps people even more than they're being helped by the therapy already.
And where did you study hypnotherapy, Doug, and when?
I've kind of always believed in these type of things. I never really had to be convinced about them. My first regression experience was when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And what I was actually doing one rainy, sunny afternoon back in Essex, where I grew up, I sat down and watched a film with my mum. And it was an old Barbara Streisand film. And in it, she's a lady, a slightly crazy lady in that film, who wants to stop smoking. And she goes to see I think it's a psychiatrist, and he puts her on the couch. And as he starts to do hypnosis on her, she actually goes into a series of past lives. And for me, even at the age of 8 or 9, whenever it was, it was quite a natural experience. Sure, people go into past life, that's what they do. So it's really always been part of my belief system. But I only really got drawn towards it professionally about 10 years ago or so. And I used to have this habit in my life, which was called smoking. And I loved smoking for many, many years. And then you could say I saw the light, I guess, and I realized I actually read the advertisement or the health warning on the back of a packet of cigarettes, and I thought, oh my God, and I knew I had to stop. And I spent about 2 years trying to stop, and I could stop for 3 months, I could stop for 6 weeks, and then I'd have maybe a glass of beer, maybe I'd have a little disagreement with the girlfriend at the time, and I'd start smoking again. And one day I saw, in my local gym, I saw an advertisement for hypnotherapy to stop smoking. And I rang the girl up, and she sounded extremely professional. And I think about 3 days later I went to see her, and long story short, I never smoked again. And for me it was just fascinating. I thought, what on earth has happened here? I consider myself to have fairly strong will, but I spent 2 years trying to stop here and there, and I couldn't do it. I had one session of hypnosis, and hey presto, there I am, a non-smoker. So I've always been a very curious person. That led me to go and study hypnosis. in London with an organization called the London College of Clinical Hypnosis. And I got so enamored with the whole process that I did, first of all, I did a short certificate course of, I think it was 4 months, and then I did a diploma, which took me 12 months, and then I did another follow-on diploma, which took me another 8 months. So I spent about 2 years studying hypnosis altogether, and I really enjoyed working with hypnosis. I was starting to work with clients, and I was getting pretty good results, but there was always something in the back of my mind that there was something missing. I'd been, by that time I was working as a Reiki professional as well, and I think I was probably starting to teach Reiki by that stage as well. It was Regression, and I read a book by a chap called Michael Newton, which was called Journey of Souls, and it was all about the life between life space, how we plan our incarnations before we actually come into existence. And for me, that was really one of those eureka moments. As I was reading the book, I was kind of tingling all over. And when I finished the book, I put down the book and I thought, this is the work that I'm here to do. And I just knew it. It was a knowing. So I went off and I spent a year studying regression therapy with the Past Life Regression Academy, who are the organization that I do most of my training with now.
Wow, that sounds like a really interesting life journey, Doug. And how long have you not smoked for now since doing the hypnotherapy?
I think it's 10 years now.
That's pretty amazing. I know a couple of friends as well who were smokers, and then they tried hypnotherapy, and now they don't smoke as well. I mean, how effective is it with people? Do they still have to have the willpower to not want to smoke?
The important thing to remember with hypnosis is that it's not a magic wand. It can't make you do anything that you're not ready to do. I.e. the motivation has got to be there in the first place. So with the people that I work with, I'm probably looking at a success rate of about 90 to 95%.
That is pretty high.
But if somebody rings me, for example, if somebody rings me this afternoon, I'm going to ask them a couple of questions. And one of the questions I'll ask them is, how, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is low and 10 is high, how motivated are you to stop? And if that number is less than an 8, I'm going to suggest that we need to work on their motivation first to stop smoking rather than go straight into a smoking session. So I'm kind of screening them to make sure that they're ready before I'll actually do a proper stop smoking session with them, which, ultimately saves them money, saves them time and trouble to do it that way around. Just, sometimes people are almost in the right place, but not quite there. So you really need to work on, what might be stopping them before you actually take them into the session proper.
Of course, some people might need that little extra push, but what would you send them off to do to motivate them?
I'd suggest they come and see me. Within the human psyche, there's always what we call different parts of ourselves, yeah? And quite often those parts are, they know what's good for us. For example, most smokers know that, smoking's pretty unhealthy for you. These days it costs you an absolute fortune. You smell bad, all the usual kind of stuff. And that we should stop. But sometimes there's a part of us which is very resistant to that, and it's quite unmotivated to do the change. So we would work on that particular part. It's just another version of hypnosis. And we're able to communicate with the part and find out what we need to do to allow them to stop smoking successfully.
And with hypnotherapy, I mean, if someone asked you, what is hypnotherapy, what would you reply to them?
Hypnotherapy is really using your own natural resources of your subconscious mind to bring about the changes that you need. Hypnosis, and it is important to remind people that hypnosis is a natural state. It's something that we all go through several times a day, or we experience something similar to hypnosis. In the sense that when we wake up in the morning or when we go to bed at night, we often experience that state where we're half awake, half asleep, that semi-daydream type state. And that's actually called at night time as we're going off to sleep, it's called the hypnagogic state. And it's very similar to what the hypnotic state is. Equally, if we're daydreaming, maybe we're sitting on the train or on the bus on the way into work. When we daydream, we're kind of going into a trance there. And hypnosis is a very much similar state to any of those, slightly altered states of consciousness, if you like. It's a very natural thing that everybody experiences. And what happens when people go into a trance state is that their subconscious mind becomes more receptive to positive suggestions. For example, when somebody wants to stop smoking, by taking them into a relaxed state, a slightly altered state of awareness, then their subconscious mind receives those stop smoking suggestions which it otherwise wouldn't take on board.
What other issues can hypnotherapy resolve besides quitting smoking?
All sorts of things, Yara. The main reasons that people come to hypnosis are stopping smoking, as you've rightly identified, weight control, confidence issues, and that can be fear of public speaking, it can be shyness in public, it can be confidence at work, it can be a variety of issues that go along with confidence. It can be sleep. A lot of people lead very stressful lives these days, and more and more people are being challenged sleep-wise. It can be as simple as, and I say as simple as, it's not quite the right word, but a stress or relaxation. We all lead pretty busy lives now. We have 101 things to do, and people simply don't get the opportunity to relax and de-stress enough. I work a lot with people with phobias, spiders, heights, agoraphobia, all sorts of things. Performance issues like sports performance, hypnosis works with very well. Exams, tests, motivation, as I've already mentioned. There's a wide variety of issues that it can help with. The list could go on.
And how can hypnotherapy alleviate short-term stress?
Basically, the first thing that somebody's doing when they agree to a hypnosis or hypnotherapy session is that they're making a bit of time for themselves. It actually involves booking an hour out of your diary, or maybe even an hour and a half. And that in itself is quite rewarding. What you're going and doing is you're talking to the hypnotherapist about the issues that are troubling you in your life. Perhaps you've got a very busy life. Perhaps you work 16 hours a day. Perhaps you've got 4 kids on top of that. Often talking about those issues and blocking an hour out of your life is very helpful before you even undergo the hypnosis. And then when you go into hypnosis, basically your body is going to relax. On the whole, I would say it's a much deeper form of relaxation for the body for a lot of people than sleeping. And, what will also happen with hypnosis is that the mind will start to relax as well. Our minds are often, working at 100 miles an hour, and slowly but surely the mind will slow down. And of course, for some people that takes a little bit longer than others. Hypnosis isn't necessarily a one-session process. In fact, it generally works a lot better over the course of several sessions. Some people, of course, are more naturally stressed than others. Some people have much more busy lives, so it might take them a little while to become more relaxed and to experience the release of stress that will come through sessions. What I often do, in fact, what I always do, is send people, firstly I send them a relaxation CD using some simple hypnosis before they even come to a session, which helps them to get used to what they might experience. And secondly, I'll often give them a reinforcement CD or MP3 these days in between the sessions so that they have something to listen to which is going to continue the process for them. A lot of hypnosis is about reinforcement. Once somebody starts to make the commitment to themselves to actually take a bit of time and maybe listen to an audio CD or MP3 of hypnosis for 15, 20 minutes a day, you'll find that the subconscious mind will start responding to that very positively.
Do you think it's got something to do with vibrations that we're exposing ourselves to as well, with the whole listening to some healing sounds that you send them?
Yeah, absolutely. The voice is a tool for healing. The voice is a vibration. So that absolutely helps with, it's energy. Einstein said many years ago, 100 or more years ago, that everything in the universe is energy vibrating at a certain frequency. And things like stress, thinking too much, a bit of emotional turbulence are all energy that's at a certain vibration. So when you send somebody a nice hypnosis recording that's relatively tranquil, peaceful, somebody with a nice soothing voice saying relaxing words, then it starts to ease the other things that are going on for that person.
Yeah, that's very true. And you said you do regression therapy as well. What's that all about, Doug?
Just to sort of give you an idea of perhaps the difference between hypnotherapy and regression, I use a metaphor where if people come to you with a problem, let's call it a bump in the road or a hole in the road, the metaphor. Often, if there's a hole in your road, you can just simply fill that hole up and the cars will go across it really smoothly and there won't be a problem. And that's hypnosis. Sometimes there's a much deeper underlying issue way down below the road. And that's when you have to dig the road up and find out what's going on down there and put it right. And that's regression. We go a lot deeper. We're going back to where the source of the problem is. And what we're looking to do is to find out when it started. Again, everything is energy, and energy has a starting point. So, whether it's invariably these things have some kind of relation to the emotions, and whether that's something from earlier in the current life, or whether that's something from what people refer to as past lives, doesn't really matter. The intention of regression therapy is to go back to the source, wherever it is, and find out what needs to be done to put it right. Or to help the client to put it right more correctly.
All right, so it could be, almost like early traumas that have just been hidden inside for a long time, and some might be carrying that energy baggage still with them.
Absolutely, that's exactly what it is, Yara. It's unresolved energy. And what we find out, whether it's current life or whether it's past lives, is that basically we need to help the client to get closure to what's happened in the past.
Do you feel sometimes, Doug, that, you did say that we're living in this fast-paced world, but it's almost like we're not afraid to express our emotions, but a lot of us go around every day wearing these masks and not truly expressing our inner feelings, and that can build up over a long time.
Well, I completely agree with you. It is about expression. And you say to me, we're not afraid to express our feelings. I think a lot of people are, to be honest with you. And I think that's a large part of the issues that are created for people, where the very nature of the word emotion, for me, means energy in motion. They should flow. And when our emotions don't flow, that's what causes dis-ease and blockages. And, you've seen, I think there was a lady called Candace Pert, I think it was about 20 years ago. She wrote a great book called The Molecules of Emotion, basically saying that when our emotions don't flow, they cause disease in the body, whether that's emotional upset, physical upset, or mental turbulence. We're meant to express in some ways. And, generally, I think a lot of people only express, and I'm generalizing, of course, but a lot of people only express when they're kind of near breaking point. Actually expressing yourself constructively in relationships using emotional intelligence is a skill that not everybody's taught. It's, frankly, it's a skill that I believe we should be taught in schools from a very early age. You see it coming into schools more and more these days, but it's not something that a lot of people over the age of 30, for example, were taught how to emotionally express. Some people may have learnt it quite well because they had emotionally intelligent parents, but not everybody was that privileged.
And there's also so many distractions around us as well that can stop us from expressing ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be cultural in some cases. A lot of, if you go into a Latin America, for example, I have the pleasure and privilege of working in Mexico a few times a year. They're a lot more emotionally expressive than, say, British people are. British people traditionally have that stiff upper lip almost.
Quite reserved we are, aren't we?
Reservedness. It's part of the cultural paradigm. If you come to Britain, you get that idea that men don't cry, which of course is crazy because we're physiologically wired the same way as women are. So it's healthy for us to be able to express emotions. But all of these,
social conditionings.
Social conditioning is the phrase, yeah.
So with the regression therapy, I mean, what insight can past life regression give us?
Well, it's really about resolving blockages, removing obstacles. And what I get typically for people who come as clients, they're coming along and they say, my life isn't working. And that may be because of an emotional issue, that may be because of an ongoing thought pattern, that may be a physical problem. Very typically it's something, a relationship's not working, or a series of relationships aren't working, or the job's not working. To give you a few examples, I had a lady a few years ago who came along and said, I've been dating the same man for the past 10 years. I've changed the face of that guy every year, so it's been a different boyfriend, but essentially it's been the same man every year who's been repeating the same pattern. What can I do about it? And what we did was regress her back to the source, which happened to be in a past life, I think in, memory serves me correct, in Victoria in England, where she was going through exactly the same scenario as she is with the last 10 boyfriends. Once we'd brought some understanding to what was happening, once we'd found out what was unfinished at the end of the life, we were able to help her transform it. Once she'd done the regression, she understood where the correlation, if you like, between the past life and the current life was. We'd done the transformation. She went off. Within 6 months, she was engaged. Totally different type of man to the one she dated in the past. She'd always been attracted to the same type of man. And when she met this guy, she was like, well, this is a bit strange because he's so unusual. But it worked. Bear in mind, you go back to the old, I think it's a Freud's diagram of the iceberg, where the conscious mind, i.e. thinking everyday mind, is the 10% above the waterline, but the subconscious mind is the 90% below the waterline. And often it's our subconscious or unconscious mind that dictate our behaviors in ways in which we don't entirely understand. And that's what we're using with hypnosis. We're going into the subconscious, unconscious mind to be able to find out these old patterns from the past and bring about change.
So, Doug, what interesting past lives have you come across?
Well, they're all interesting, quite frankly, Yara, because it's, one of the reasons, there's many reasons why I love this job, but one of them is the fact that I like people and I like their stories. So they're always interesting to me. There's a few theories for reincarnation and past lives. One of them, of course, is that it's true. Reincarnation is a belief in Hinduism, 950 million people on the planet. In Buddhism, it's quite widely accepted, another 350 million people on the planet. So it's about 20% of the world's population. A survey, I think 12 years ago, found out that about 25% of people in Europe believe in reincarnation too. But one of the other theories for reincarnation and past lives is that it's a metaphor, that our unconscious mind is making up for a situation that we don't want to consciously look at. Another idea is that these past lives are a part of what Jung called the collective unconscious. So when we go into what we believe is a past life, it's as though we go into the collective unconscious and try on a past life like we might a suit of clothes. Some people believe, another point of view, that past lives are DNA memory. Somehow it's genetic memory from our ancestors. What I'd say is that all of those theories have some foundation in truth. What we're concerned with as therapists who work with regression is that our client gets remission from our symptoms. And I've seen some past lives which I could question whether they're actually true. But it's not my job to do that. My job is to make sure that the client actually reduces their symptoms and reaches their goal. For example, I've had famous people lives. And, famous people are interesting. I think the last records that and it's very vague, almost like word of mouth records, but I read on the internet somewhere that about 11 or 12,000 people had past life regressions to the life of Mary Magdalene. And you could say, well, that's a bit odd, and it is a bit odd, but I contribute to those statistics because I've had a couple of clients who've had lives where they've regressed to that life. And what the interesting thing is when it relates to their current life. And one of my clients who regressed in that case spent most of the session in tears, which was extremely cathartic and extremely useful for her, because the connection between that life that she experienced and her current life was that she was mourning the loss of a relationship. And by going into that life, you could say it's archetypal, you could say it's metaphorical, doesn't really matter what words you use, but she released a lot of the pent-up energy within her that related to her current life relationship. And again, she was actually able to move on a few months later and move into a new relationship.
I find it really fascinating how we can hold on to all of that in our subconscious and sometimes not be aware of it.
Yes, it is. And I mean, it's like what we talked about 5 or 10 minutes ago. It's about being able to emotionally express. And that's really a skill that we're relearning. When we can emotionally express, then we don't carry this baggage around with us. And it's not sitting there within our energy field, within our psyche, and holding us back in any way.
You're right. It's hard for some people to express themselves, always trying to put a strong face in front of others and almost view it as a weak thing to emotionally release. But really, you have to release so you can move on.
Well, that's absolutely so right, Yara. We get a lot of what we call catharsis in regression. As regression therapists, we get through an awful lot of boxes of tissues. However, that's a very positive thing for the client because it is that release. And the nature of the word catharsis actually means to purify. Often the tears that we get in these sessions are very deep, very old tears that have been there for a very long time. So getting those out of the energy field is vitally important for people to allow them to just simply move forward.
And do you ever find, Doug, that you come across people who are so into helping other people and they'll always be there for their friends and their family, but then they forget to take care of themselves?
Yes. Is the short answer to that. There's many lovely people like that around the world. And I always remind people, because I get some of them as clients sometimes, I think most people these days have got on an aeroplane. And, one of the safety warnings that they give you when they go through the drill at the start of your flight is that should there be a problem and the oxygen mask drop, then make sure you put it on yourself first before you attend to anybody else. Because it's really important to help yourself so that you can help other people.
What is life between lives?
Well, really, if you accept, and you don't necessarily have to accept, but if you go along with the idea that we've all reincarnated time and time again, and just imagine that as a linear line going from left to right. It's not quite how it works, but that's the easiest way to think about it. In between those lives, something has happened. And what we've found, or what's been discovered, is that in between those lives, we go into a space that some people call home. The Tibetans call it the bardo. Some people refer to it as heaven, if you like. We call it the life between life space. And that's a place where souls reflect on their previous incarnations and the lessons and the learnings that have come up in those previous lives, and they plan their next incarnations. This life between lives work came into prominence at the end of during the 80s, basically, there was a man called Michael Newton in the States who discovered it pretty much by accident. And when he was regressing a client who had a problem with friendships in the current life, she was a very isolated lady and she really didn't have any groups of friends. He gave her a slightly, let's call it a misguided, or let's call it a misunderstanding type of instruction, but a very well guided type of one. And he said, go to the place where you last had a group of friends around you. And she started talking about a group of friends who were so loving, who were so supportive, and she started describing them in energetic terms rather than material, bodily terms. And what Newton did over the next, I think, 5 or 10 years was he regressed about 7,000 people to the life between life space, and he did an incredibly detailed study of the similarities between what a lot of these people were experiencing. And when he wrote his books, which were called The Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, he really put down a roadmap, if you like, for the most common experiences between these thousands of people that he'd regressed. And that was the start of the therapy. And that's all very interesting, but often what people need to know is what are the benefits of doing something like this. And the benefits of life between life therapy are huge because people start to understand or to gain a greater understanding of the reasons why they're here. Whilst we use past life regression or regression therapy to clear blocks in people's lives, and that helps with a bit of understanding too, for sure, sometimes a lot of understanding, the life between lives is all about gaining a deeper insight into those big picture questions. Why am I here? What am I doing? Is there let's call it a mission for me in this life? Is there something I'm supposed to be doing? And a lot of people around the planet at the moment, especially those who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, who are, let's say, of an obviously spiritual inclination, are starting to ask those bigger picture questions. They're starting to search for a deeper meaning in life. It simply can't be all about the material world. There has to be something more going on. And often what can really give people insights into those bigger picture questions is the life between life's work. And if you'd like to get into it, I'd recommend you read perhaps one of Michael Newton's books, or my teacher and the director of the Regression Academy who I work with, Andy Tomlinson, wrote a wonderful book called Exploring the Eternal Soul, where he takes the case studies of 5 people who had no experience at all in that area, 5 people who had a bit and had forgotten about it, and 5 people who had a lot. And, that proved for very interesting reading just because of the different cross-section of experiences going into that book. But there's a lot of similarities between the life between life space and what some people start to experience or have experienced through their near-death experiences. Again, there's a wonderful book that's been written quite recently by a lady called Anita Moorjani, called Dying to Be Me. And Anita is a lady who was living in Hong Kong, and to briefly say her story, she had what was considered to be terminal cancer for 4 years. She went into hospital. She was incredibly underweight. When I say incredibly, I really mean it. I think she was weighing something like 5 or 6 stone. She was basically skin and bones. She had tumors all over her body the size of lemons. And her organs were all starting to fail when she went into hospital, and basically people expected the worst. And what happened with her is that she went into a near-death experience, which she recovered from, obviously, as it's a near-death experience. And in the next few days, when she came back to consciousness, she had a spontaneous healing of her cancer. Basically, all the tumors disappeared, all the lesions on her body disappeared while she was under medical supervision, and basically her life turned around. It's a fascinating read, and she had greater perspective on life. She had greater, let's call it greater empathy with the world itself, with the people in the world. It really was a greater spiritual understanding as well. It really was a life-changing experience for her for obvious reasons. And it's a fairly extreme example of what people experience in life between lives, but there's a lot of similarities between the experiences that she's talking about in her book while she's having the near-death experience and what people get in life between life sessions. They often meet relatives that have passed in these experiences. They often experience tunnels or going into places of light where they get wisdom and understanding about what's going on in their life at the moment. And that was the experience with her and lots of other near-death experience survivors, and that's the experience with a lot of our clients as well. The level of wisdom can really be quite life-changing and life-enhancing.
So that's the book, Exploring the Eternal Soul.
That's Andy Tomlinson's book, which is a lovely read. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely going to check that out,
And
Doug.
Anita Moorjani, Dying to Be Me, is the book about near-death experiences. There's a lot that's available on the internet on near-death experiences, and it's a very interesting area because, what's happening there is that the medical profession, of course, are quite closely involved in that. And it's one of the places where science meets spirituality, which is really important because, a lot of us who walk down the spiritual, the healing path know that these things work. We know it because we see it with hundreds of clients, with all the clients that our colleagues and friends work with. It's thousands and tens of thousands of clients, but it's actually getting this stuff out into the real world, if you like, or more into the real world, that's really important. And that's where science and the medical profession are really important. And that's why near-death experiences are quite interesting, because of the depth in which the medical profession are investigating. It's a very interesting area. As I've name-dropped a couple of times, I work with the Regression Academy, and with the Regression Academy, we work in a very measurable way for people. We really, when people come to us with problems, we're working with what we call measurable symptoms. We're documenting the whole process of how their symptoms, how their issues improve. And what Andy, the director of the Regression Academy, does, he coordinates a lot of, or we're starting to coordinate more and more with an organization called SMART, which are basically medical professionals who believe in regression therapy and the benefits that can bring for more and more people. And it's a wonderful concept to be part of, because I think it's really, I think it's where we're headed. It's the future. Science does have to meet spirituality. There's obvious common ground, and the medical profession and those who are open to holistic methods within that, and equally the holistic practitioners who can embrace the medical professions, are going to be the pioneers of that.
Everything is made up of energy and vibration. That's what many wise people of the past and the present teach us. But if someone was to ask you, Doug, what is electromagnetic field energy, what would you say to them?
Well, it's us. It's our, it's our own energy field. You can go on Google or on the internet, depending on your search engine preference, and you can Google things like Kirlian photography, Kirlian, and what it will show you is photographs of the energy body, which will prove, or hopefully for most people will prove, that we're much more than just the physical body as we appear to most people. We actually have a series of energy fields around us, which are effectively electromagnetic energy.
And do you think, Doug, I'm not sure what every person in the world thinks about this subject, but do you think if more people had awareness about electromagnetic field energy and vibration and all this knowledge, that they would start to perceive the world differently?
Yeah, I do. I think that's, I think a lot of these, the things that we've been talking about, I think are things that we can be taught in school. We talked about emotional intelligence a little bit earlier. We could talk about, energy fields and energy bodies in school. I know some clients who are parents, and they, some of them teach their kids this stuff from the age of 8 or 10, and it really helps their children navigate through school and navigate through life. It's an additional skill which can, really enhance people's lives. So I think it'd make a huge difference. That's why we need to expand our ideas and work with the medical profession, because, these ideas need to be communicated to a much wider range of people. The amount of people on medication at the moment, even mild antidepressants, or especially mild antidepressants, is huge. And a lot of that could be avoided. I'm a firm believer that there are many possible reasons for depression. And there are some instances where medication can help in the short term. There are sometimes chemical imbalances, and the medication can help to stabilize that in the short term. But also, the reasons can be a negative thought pattern. It can be environmental pollution. I would also say that another, possible explanation for depression is that it can be karmic. It's something that we need to work through, and it's a lesson, it's a learning for us, and by a wider degree of awareness, it's allowed you to communicate with more people and to open your own ideas and experience up to more people. So it's, okay, it was tough at the time, but I dare say it's really helped you with your life journey in many ways.
And Doug, going on to spirit release therapy, what is that exactly?
Well, we've talked about the aura, the electromagnetic energy body, and how we have an energy body around us. Often that energy body, or with a lot of people, it can be quite sensitive. And sometimes we can pick up energies that don't belong to us within that energy body. An obvious example of that is, if we go onto the tube, for example, sometimes we can sort of stand next to somebody and we can almost sense or pick up their bad mood, or their infectious happiness. We can pick up on their emotions. Sometimes if you walk into a room where there's just been an argument between two people, you can sense the atmosphere. You can feel it. So our energy bodies are quite sensitive. And an extreme version of that is that sometimes we pick up those thoughts, those emotions from other people, and they stay in our energy field. And they need to be, our energy should be our own. And a slightly more extended version of that is that when we pick up energies that are other people, sometimes when people pass from this world, we know that the physical body dies. With most people, the consciousness moves on, and it moves into the life between life realms. It moves into heaven, the bardo, whatever word you want to use at that point. Sometimes consciousness or energy, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing, gets stuck, or it becomes earthbound. And we have what are called earthbound spirits. Some people might refer to them as ghosts. And sometimes those earthbound spirits can get caught up in people's energy field. One of a variety of symptoms, fatigue, low energy, a blockage of some kind. There was a girl who came to me probably about 5 years ago now, who couldn't form relationships with adult males. And I think she was about 35, 40. She said, I just can't communicate with the other sex. In theory, I know that's my gender preference. I simply can't perform a relationship, and I've got a bit of a social anxiety about even going on a date. I can't get near them. And what we discovered when we took her into a session was that the energy of her deceased grandmother had got caught up in her energy field. And her grandmother's energy was able to express itself through the lady and said that I'm trying to protect her. I don't want her going out and being caught up with those, I think she said, impetuous young men, and words to that effect. And what her grandmother was doing was basically projecting her own belief system onto her granddaughter. And the granddaughter was kind of unconsciously manifesting it in her everyday interactions. So what we did was release the energy of the grandmother and help the grandmother to move back when she needed to go, which was into the spirit realm, the life between life space.
So it's almost like filtering the energy body.
Yeah, I mean,
our attachments.
Of attachments, exactly. Our energy field should be our own. Life is what it is, and there's lots of energy around, the energy from our mobile phones, from our Skype connections, from Wi-Fi, all sorts of things reverberates through our energy field. Sometimes it weakens them. Other things may weaken our energy fields too, and it makes us more susceptible to picking up energies from other people. Sometimes bad moods aren't our own. Sometimes we've just picked up energy that doesn't belong. And quite often there's a natural organic process and we can release that automatically. But sometimes things get stuck.
Like inner child therapy.
Well, inner child therapy is something else. It's slightly different too. It's very different to spirit release. But, inner child therapy is part of us getting stuck in the past. So there's a similarity in that respect, for sure. It's part of us that gets frozen in time. We sometimes, when there's a childhood event where there's what we describe as a trauma, part of us gets frozen in time and we get stuck in that behavior. And when that event repeats itself, part of us gets stuck in time, if you like. And that can be, people have quite demanding lives sometimes. Sometimes that can be as a result of trauma. That can be physical abuse, that can be mental abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and sometimes that can be for a much more innocent reason. Perhaps our parents didn't understand what we were trying to communicate to them. We see, as a child, we see through a very different lens than from an adult lens. We have a completely different perspective. As a child, we don't really have filters in place. We take things in very literally. And, we don't always know the difference between what's wrong and what's right. We have to learn those skills. And when we see behaviors, sometimes by our parents or guardians or our immediate family or whoever may be around us, when we see them behaving, we mimic, we copy. We don't necessarily know whether what they're doing is the right, responsible way to behave. So sometimes part of us is just repeating what we know already, and we're stuck in time in that way. The regression, the spirit release, the life between lives, hypnosis, and inner child work really all sit together quite nicely. They're slightly different aspects of regression therapy, but they all sit there quite nicely under that umbrella. One of the things that I also work with very much is sound, and sound as a healer has fascinated me for many, many years. Sound and crystals are things that I'm intrigued by. Again, they're vibrations that work at a certain frequency that can often help people to relax, to let go of everyday concerns, and also to heal and to shift stuff. And crystal bowl sound healing is about using our intention as well as the sound and the energy of the crystals to relax and let go of whatever we need to. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm running regular group healings once a month on the 22nd of each month, where people can experience crystal bowl healings and see how it works for them. People experience it in different ways. People tend to relax. That's the first thing they do. And they're unconscious. It's a much more unconscious thing. When I work with regression, people are quite conscious of what they're letting go of. With crystal bowl healing, sometimes they're a bit more unconscious of what's happening. And that's fine. They're kind of just letting go of stuff within the unconscious mind, within the energy field. It's like a clearing has taken place. It's almost like a sound. Sometimes you call these things sound baths or sound showers. And it's like the sound and the energy of the crystals will wash through the energy field and help to clear away what's ready to be released. For people who are interested, there is a brief video of a crystal bowl on my website that we'll give a link to that fairly soon.
For sure. And Doug, have you ever heard of, I love talking about this guy, but his name is Dr. Masaru Emoto.
I knew you were about to say that. He's actually talking in London on the 29th of September at Alternatives. There's a little plug for Alternatives. He's fabulous, and I truly believe in that. And he's doing the same thing as we're all doing, because, the foundation stone of all the energy work that we do is intention. And what Emoto is working with, he's putting his intention into the water, which he then photographs in crystallized form to see how the crystallized forms of the water have changed. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're putting our intention into the work, whether it's through regression, whether it's through crystal bowl healing, to see how we can bring about change in the individual. And I have to say, Emoto-san has worked with some fantastic results. His work is quite amazing.
The different water crystals that are exposed to the positive and negative vibrations.
Yeah.
Just for anyone who hasn't seen Dr. Emoto's work, please Google it and check it out, because it's completely fascinating to see how the different vibrations can affect the water. And we're initially made up of a lot of water, aren't we?
Well, aren't we 75-80% water? So it's quite easy to see how we pick up these patterns of the past, or how we retain them.
I would be so interested to see how a water crystal would form after some crystal bowl healing sound therapy.
That's a very interesting idea, isn't it?
Are you going to go on the 29th of September?
I'm actually going to book my ticket this afternoon. It's on my list of things to do.
Yeah, I might have to check that out. So if I just type in
www.alternatives.org, and you'll find a link to it there.
What about your websites, Doug, if people want to find you?
My website is www.dougbuckingham.com. Just as a small plug, I have a regression workshop coming up on the 21st of September in the UK, which you can find a link to on that site. I also have a crystal bowl healing sound evening on the 22nd of September. Again, there's a link to that on my website. And for those people there is a lot of information about regression on my own site, but also you'd probably want to check out the Regression Academy website, who I do a lot of my regression work with. It's www.regressionacademy.com.
What happens to the mind and the body when you're going through a crystal bowl healing session?
Different people do different things. Some people fall asleep. Some people pop in and out of consciousness, as you're aware that sometimes we have deep sleep when we go to sleep at night, and sometimes we have light sleep. So the consciousness kind of goes up and down a little bit. Some people are quite conscious of the whole experience, and some people drift off into a favorite place. They might sort of remember a time when they went on holiday. We had a person last week who was remembering lots of childhood experiences as they were going through the healing. Most people's bodies are stationary because they're lying down, but sometimes the bodies move about a bit. The arms may move a bit, the legs may move a bit, because, stuff is being triggered within the body and within the consciousness. So, it's fine if people move around. When I run these crystal bowl healings, the group sessions, I limit them to 12 people so people have plenty of space to move around in.
So is there anything else you want to add, Doug?
What I would say is, to somebody who's interested in this area, is try. Try and have an experience of some kind, whether it's crystal bowls, whether it's regression. Be open to this kind of stuff. It changes people's lives. It's life enhancing, it's life changing, it's hugely beneficial. And there's a lot of difference between theoretical knowledge and experiential knowledge. I think, what we're doing at this moment in time in terms of humanity, I think there's a massive change in humanity coming and about to come more and more. And I think the trick is we have a lot of knowledge out there. We know a lot of this kind of stuff, but the trick is for humanity to start applying it. We can't just know it, we have to live it. And I think that's the big thing. So what I'd say to people is go out and have the experiences. Start to, and if you believe in this kind of area, start to see how you can integrate it into your everyday life. More and more, whatever it is, whether it's meditation, yoga, whatever it is, live it, breathe it, because that's how we change the world. It's that whole thing of Gandhi.
I was just about to say that, Doug.
We be the change that we are in the world. We don't have to go out and demonstrate and shout about it. We simply have to be the action. We have to be what we believe in. And that's the journey for humankind. We really, too many people talk about it. Lots of people do it, but we need all of those people who are talking about it, doing it as well, being the change.
Oh, thanks again, Doug. It's been really great talking to you. You've really inspired me.
Good. It's my pleasure, Yara. And if you'd like to come along to the Crystal Bowl Healing on the 22nd, you're very welcome to come as my guest.
And that was Doug Buckingham for the Natural Healing Show on UK Health Radio, speaking with us today. Doug does have some events coming up in September. So you have an insight into regression therapy, which is on a Sunday, 21st of September, and a crystal bowl sound healing therapy evening, which is on Monday the 22nd of September. But just like Doug said, you can find all of that info and what he does on his website, which is www.dougbuckingham.com. And you can also find Doug on Twitter. Remember to follow the Natural Healing Show on Twitter. You can find us at twitter.com/UK Healing. And you can find us on Facebook. So www.facebook.com/Natural Healing Show. Please do connect and share with us any insights or ideas that you have on natural healing. We've come to the end now of the Natural Healing Show. Thank you so much for joining me again. My name's Yara. Sending blessings out to you all, and I hope you can join me next time where I speak to someone else who will share their insight and knowledge into natural healing and the vast therapies that natural healing can offer. Wishing you all a wonderful week. Stay blessed, people, and I will hopefully catch you on the next show.